news of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag in the back. Says you.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm your host, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. This week, what a remarkable spectacle. Some 250,000 people from across the nation marched on the Capitol in the 41st annual March for Life. And this is really a cause for celebration. Everywhere we turn, there is growing support for the pro-life movement. This generation is waking up to the carnage that is abortion. The mainstream media certainly doesn't want to cover this topic, certainly doesn't want to give it its due. But what you all need to know is this. What takes place in this country at the annual March for Life is the world's largest anti-abortion event. You heard that right. What happens in the United States of America every year is the world's largest rally against abortion. And we are making a statement, not just in this country, but one that is echoing worldwide. Even Pope Francis made a statement giving his support to this rally that Americans put on every single year. And we have cause and reason to celebrate because public opinion is slowly changing. We don't yet have a majority who are anti-abortion, but for the first time in I think ever since Roe v. Wade, there are more people who are anti-abortion than there are those who support abortion. The latest statistics are that breaks down 48 to 45. So that is more good news. The March for Life is changing its tactics. One of the things that they are emphasizing is the value and the beauty of adoption. So they want to encourage women, rather than killing that baby, do the right thing, put it up for adoption, and turn a crisis into a cause of great celebration, a source of great celebration, that is. Well, you can hear the passion right from the mall in Washington, D.C., as Representative Hautzler explained just how many babies are still killed in this country. Roll it, Brittany.
Who knows? If lives had not been taken, perhaps we would have a cure for cancer now, or some other medical breakthrough. Think about it. In 2008, more children died from abortion than Americans died in the Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War I, World War II, Korean, Vietnam, and Gulf War combined. This must stop.
Yes, it must stop, and America is waking up. In fact, one of the tremendous results that has occurred as a result of the backlash against Obamacare in the midterm elections of 2010 is that across the country, there were more conservatives who were elected to state governments, more in their respective houses and senates, and more governors. As a result, check out this really interesting statistic. There were more state abortion restrictions in the years 2011 to 2013 than in the entire previous decade. So we are also winning this battle in another way. Legislatively, we are chipping away at the ability to have abortions. We're restricting it to the right and to the left and to the center. And we need to continue to do that. So many times I'm asked in all my radio broadcasts, well, Dr. Grace, so much of the news that you relay is gloomy, it's pessimistic. What can we do? Look at the people in action. When you elect good people in office, little by little things do change. And now the Republican Party is promoting a very aggressive pro-life platform in which they want to essentially criminalize abortion at the 20-week mark. So we need to go out there and support every single candidate that is willing to do that. And inch by inch, we can possibly overturn Roe v. Wade. The voices against abortion are growing, and you can hear them in different corners of this country. They are loud, they are clear, they are strong, they are magnificent. One advisor to the Republican National Committee, her name is Barbara Hollingsworth, she recommended to all the candidates out there who are up against Democrats, don't be intimidated by the phony war on women slogan. Just stand up to them. Listen to her advice. Roll it, Brittany.
It sounds so radical. But look at the Republican governors in the Midwest. They're all pro-life, and they don't get any of this war on women guff because they know their opponents know that they'll take it in the teeth if they try it.
Yeah, that's right. The governors do a much better job combating this phony war on women campaign that the Democrats have created than the Republican candidate Mitt Romney did. He had a lot of baggage going into the campaign about whether he had changed his viewpoint legitimately or had done it simply strategically. He really didn't stand up to those charges against him and against Republicans who support life. And she's right. There are so many governors out there who do a brilliant job throwing cold water on the idea that to support life is somehow anti-women. It's quite the opposite. It's one of the most pro-women policies you can have. It is the embracing of the woman and all of her gifts and strengths, including that of being able to give life. It is the pro-life movement that embraces women's unique capacity as life givers, not the other way around. So to all the candidates out there, stand up loud and clear and strong against this phony, cockamamie war on women strategy that the Democrats keep throwing at us. And the voices against abortion can even be heard in Congress itself. Recently, Michelle Bachmann gave an impassioned speech. Roll it, Brittany.
Can't lose 56 million innocent American lives and not be changed. Just to put it in context, 56 million means the entire state, the entire population of my state of Minnesota, over 10 times over. That's how many of our fellow brothers and sisters have been lost through the carnage of abortion. But the other calculus is the loss to 56 million American women. Women who have had ongoing, precious, innocent human life literally pulled from their body. I weep and I mourn for women who've been lied to. Women who are forced into undergoing this very violent procedure that for many people altered their life forever. They can't deal with the guilt. So 56 million unborn children, 56 million women, also 56 million fathers. 56 million who their child is the one that was unborn. I think we can do better.
You know, she made a lot of brilliant points in that speech. One of the things she did extremely well is she referred to all those who are killed as our brothers and sisters. And I recommend to everybody out there, when you talk about abortion, humanize the fetus. Remember, they want you to talk about that baby inside the womb as a thing. They want you to use scientific language like the fetus, like I just did. And that's wrong. Don't use that language. What we need to do is call it a baby. Call it a brother and a sister. Name it. Call it by name. It is a child that is killed. And she did that really well. Humanize the fetus is one of the things I tell everybody who talks about abortion. If we're going to win this battle, we need to make sure that everybody understands we're talking about a human life, not a blob and not a thing. And what else she did that was really brilliant? We need to press this argument much more forcefully. There is no such thing as a consequence-free abortion. Women who have abortions suffer their whole lives as a result of the decision that they make. I can share a little story with you. I was a young professor at Virginia Tech. It was one of my first teaching jobs in the United States. I had taught before at McGill and at the University of Ottawa. At Virginia, the University of Virginia in Richmond. At Virginia there, at that university, I decided that I was going to teach a course on the history of women. And in one of those lectures, I talked about abortion. And my strong anti-abortion feelings came through. And I explained exactly what was at stake and what it is that women do. And suddenly there was a girl in the class who simply broke down in tears. She was just bawling. And there I learned a very, very important lesson. I saw it with my very own eyes. No matter how many times it occurred to me, it was very obvious that that young girl had had an abortion. And she was still grieving or still suffering the consequences of having made that choice. It occurred to me right then and there that it doesn't matter how many times these young women are told that it's okay and it's something easy to do. That is a lie. Every person who undergoes this procedure of snuffing out the life inside of them suffers lifelong guilt, remorse, unexplained feelings that will drive them to do very strange things for the rest of their lives, including getting pregnant again rather quickly. That tends to be one of the results of an abortion, ironically, is that the guilt becomes so overpowering that women tend to get pregnant again in order to compensate for that. Well, that's a whole huge discussion that we need to keep having in this country about the impact that abortion has on a woman's psyche, her body, and her heart, and the lifelong guilt that many of them struggle with. I wonder how many would choose that path if they knew what it was that they were embarking on. And there's another great point that Michelle Bachmann hit upon, and that is the men. The men who have no say whatsoever in the death of their child. That is monstrous. And another thing that we can do to chip away at this abortion epidemic is to empower men to have a say in this. Should we not give men the power to delay or preferably even block this procedure? It is their child, after all. In any other case, we give men and women equal power over their children. Why not over abortion? It's because we buy the line that that baby belongs to the woman's body. No, it doesn't. The minute that that baby is conceived, it belongs to the woman, to the man, to the society as a whole. It belongs to all of us because that is a future citizen. But most important of all, that baby belongs to God, and only God has the power to give life and the power to take it away. It doesn't belong to the woman's body. And the more we clarify that, the more we can empower other members of the family who might want to block that death, especially the father, who should have an equal say in that abortion. A father has equal say in adoption. A father has equal say in just about every other decision involving his child. How dare we take it away from fathers? And there's much more on this abortion story. There is also Brit Hume, who came out on Fox News with an absolutely brilliant defense of life. Roll it, Brittany.
In that time, science has given us an ever clearer picture of just how much of a baby a fetus is. At 20 weeks, we now know these tiny creatures can hear, even recognize a mother's voice. Their toenails are growing and their hearts beat loud enough to be heard by a stethoscope. The moral case for allowing such beings to be killed grows ever weaker, and its advocates resort to ever more absurd euphemisms to describe what they support. They're not really pro-abortion, they've long said. They're pro-choice. This isn't about killing unborn babies. It's about reproductive health. And the biggest chain of abortion clinics in the country refers to itself as Planned Parenthood. In 2012, this organization says it carried out, quote, abortion procedures 329,445 times. Whatever that number represents, it's not parenthood.
That's right, Mr. Hume. It's not parenthood, it's murder. That's the word that we need to use if we're really going to criminalize abortion. And he hit it right on the head. Science is showing us just how developed that baby is early on. And the more we tout those statistics and the more we show those images, the more we take away this idea that that being in the womb is a thing or a blob. It's not a thing or a blob. Science is on our side. And one of the things we also must be very vigilant about is our use of words, as I said before. And Brit Hume identified very clearly, it's not pro-choice, it's not reproductive health, and it's not parenthood. What the abortion movement does is it destroys human life, period. It's as simple as that. And we, on the other hand, must say we embrace all life from its very inception as the greatest blessing on earth. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com, and I am upholding values that will never, never die.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. You are listening to the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. Just a postscript on the story we discussed in the previous segment about abortion. I have a column in the World Tribune. Please look at it. It is an explanation of the March for Life, but more important, it puts together the arguments that we need to make repeatedly across this country in order to continue to win hearts and minds to change this scourge of abortion upon our land. So check it out at worldtribune.com. Now, a really heartbreaking story. I say this, my heart is heavy. My heart is broken. This week, the former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell, and his wife, Maureen, were charged with corruption. Federal investigation led to charges of corruption being leveled against them. There was a 43-page indictment, and it is unbelievable. I read it. I could not believe my eyes. I want to preface all my comments on this story by saying that I was previously a huge fan of the governor, as I think many, many across the nation were. In fact, in April, and you can see this on the Edmund Burke Institute website, I wrote a column saying the right running mate, Romney must choose competence over flash. That was in April of 2012. And at the end of the column, I declared that the best person to be Mitt Romney's running mate was Governor Bob McDonnell. And I touted all of his credentials, his executive experience. He was a great fiscal conservative with a record of outstanding policies. He was previously a lieutenant colonel in the Army. He had outstanding both domestic and foreign policy credentials, and that he would be able to fire up the conservative base, and he would be able to carry a pivotal swing state like Virginia. Those were all my arguments, and that is why this week I was appalled at what appears to be a colossal error in judgment by the governor and his wife. What happened here? Well, from the emails that are disclosed in the indictment, it is really clear that the McDonnells were both in over their heads financially. They had an overwhelming amount of debt. In fact, in one of the emails, Maureen writes, We are broke here, and Bob is screaming at me for all the credit card debts that I keep racking up. So it's very clear that they had financial trouble. And what happens? Well, there was a leader of a company who came along. His name is Johnny Williams. And he said, you know what? I've got a product that my company, Star Scientific, has created. And I'd love your help to, promote this to the health community, get it out there in the public, see what you can do. And lo and behold, the McDonald's took the bait. Over the course of a few years, they received, check it out, $165,000 in gifts and loans. Of that $165,000, $120,000 of that was straight cash. And some of it was now the governor is saying it was a loan, quote unquote, but it was a loan, guess what? Without paperwork. Who does a loan without paperwork? Nowadays, any of you who've embarked in any kind of a transaction where you take money and you intend to pay it back, the amount of documents you have to sign are mammoth. So it really stretches credulity that this man gave the McDonald's a loan and without any paperwork. It seems by what is listed on the indictment. Now, this obviously remains to be proven, so we're going to qualify this whole segment with a big if. If all of this is true, if everything that's listed in the indictment is true, the governor behaved in a manner that was morally and ethically completely unacceptable and also is illegal, and he may end up in jail, he and his wife, for a very long time, because it appears by what the indictment states that there was a quid pro quo, meaning every time a gift was given, a favor was subsequently done for this company. Now, McDonnell, Bob, the governor, is a brilliant man, and he has come out saying that he is falsely accused. Roll it, Brittany.
I come before you this evening as someone who has been falsely and wrongfully accused and whose public service has been wrongfully attacked.
He goes on to say that what he had with Mr. Johnny Williams was a personal friendship, and we know that seems to be stretching credulity. Roll it, Brittany.
I did nothing illegal for Mr. Williams in exchange for what I believed was his personal friendship and his generosity.
Well, guess what? The quote-unquote personal friendship began in 2009. So it was really fresh on the heels of the governor achieving power. And so it's really stretching the bounds of credulity to say that this was a friendship. It was very clear that this was a prospective donor, somebody who was going to help the governor achieve his political objectives. And as everybody involved in the campaign knows, those who help generally want something in return. And it's not friendship. At best, it's an alliance. So I think he is overstating the nature of the relationship. But listen very carefully to the rest of what he says in his own defense. Roll it, Brittany.
I never promised, and Mr. Williams and his company never received any government benefit of any kind for me or from my administration. No contract, loan, grant, funding, legislation, budget appropriation, regulation, board or commission assignment, or any other official state benefit.
Notice the legalese. He's saying that there was no official state benefit. And that's a very lawyered statement that he just read. That he never received a specific contract, a specific loan, a specific grant. All of this may result in the fact that the governor may be able to acquit himself. Maybe. It remains to be seen. Because it looks like he was trying to thread that needle very carefully and stay on the right side of the law, even while he was doing something that everybody in politics knows is completely unethical. It seems to me, from what I read, if those charges are accurate, the governor behaved in a manner of colossal misjudgment. And I say this as someone who, having lived and worked in Washington, D.C. for more than a decade, I worked in the political arena, I worked as a journalist. One of the very first things that I was told by the higher-ups in the company at the Washington Times, and we were given lectures on this, we were given public documents on this. As a journalist, you're not to accept any gifts whatsoever. You don't accept them. Even if somebody takes you out to lunch, you should pay for that lunch. If somebody takes you out to dinner, you should pay for that. And what they insisted to was, look, we give lots of you an expense account. When I became the editor of Base News, I had an expense account. So if I needed to work a source, you control the parameters of that relationship and you control the financial aspect of that relationship. I was a journalist and I understood very clearly, never, ever, ever put yourself in a situation where somebody can say that a story was written in exchange for a favor that you received or a perk that you received. That would destroy my credibility. So this is operating in Washington, D.C. 101. And Bob McDonnell and his wife, they knew this. But from the statement that you just heard, what he and she were trying to do, they were going to thread that needle. Oh, because they wanted those perks. They wanted those shopping sprees. They wanted that Rolex watch. She wanted a beautiful dress for the inaugural. She wanted more money for her daughter's wedding. She wanted those fancy golf trips. She wanted to ride in Mr. Williams's Ferrari. She wanted those luxurious vacations on Cape Cod. They wanted all those perks and privileges of being the governor and the wife of the governor. They wanted to live the high life. And there's no question about it. The governor did seat Mr. Williams, gave him pride of place in certain luncheons, as the indictment points out. These are obviously matters of public record. The governor did tell the Department of Health in Virginia to see what they could do to promote one of the products that Star Scientific had created. So the indictment has a mountain of documents, and the indictment shows a timeline of gifts versus favor. Gifts versus favor. So even if Mr. McDonnell thinks he's going to thread the needle on that, it may be that he will still be found guilty because it will be clear that there was a quid pro quo, even if there wasn't a specific grant or a contract, etc., etc. How on earth could a brilliant and good man allow this to happen to him? Governor McDonnell, say it isn't so. How could you allow this to happen? He should not have accepted any gifts, and he should not have put himself in a situation, especially where it was so clear that a gift is received and then some kind of favor is given. In addition, the indictment shows that his wife purchased stock in Star Scientific. I mean, talk about a conflict of interest. Talk about dumb. And then there's all kinds of financial maneuvers where they try to get that stock out of Star Scientific to avoid disclosing it in certain disclosures, and then putting it in a shell company, and then possibly transferring it in some other family member's name at some point. So they were trying as much as they could to get around the law. Governor, the laws exist for a reason. Your goal should not have been to say, how can I get my greedy little paws on all of these goodies and work around the letter of the law? Grasp the spirit of the law. We need our public officials to not have a conflict of interest. That's why these laws exist. And how dare you put yourself in that position? I'm outraged because this is a man who tarnishes the conservative cause because Republicans can be accused of corruption. And this is the kind of entanglement we need to avoid. Let us see what happens as events unfold, but it is very clear he can no longer be seen as a front runner for the Republican nomination. He is going to have to work very, very hard to keep himself and his wife out of jail. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, upholding values that will never die.
Feel the pain of the scars that won't heal. Your eyes have died.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
I don't wanna be lonely no more. I don't wanna have to pay for this. I don't wanna know the lover at my door. It's just another heartache on my list. I don't wanna be angry no more. You know I can never stand.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. This week, the president was caught in more lies. This is becoming a theme of his administration. He cannot tell the truth. And it's not that he can't tell the truth on little things, it's on mammoth things, big lies. It appears that the deal that he struck with Iran is not what he says it is. The Iranian foreign minister gave an interview indicating that, as far as they understand it, the sanctions are to be lifted, but not in exchange for dismantling the nuclear program. Roll it, Brittany.
Well, the terminology is different. The White House tries to portray it as basically a dismantling of Iran's nuclear program. That is the word that they use time and again. And I urge you to read the entire text. If you find a single word that even closely resembles dismantling or could be defined as dismantling in the entire text, then I would take back my comment.
So what is it Iran doing?
Iran? No. What the text, what Iran has agreed is not to enrich above 5%. We did not agree to dismantle anything.
Meaning they can get to the nuclear bomb at the day and time of their choosing. And what they're doing now is simply buying time. They're going to get the brutal sanctions lifted. They're going to get a freeze on billions of dollars lifted. This will give relief to their economy. And when they're ready, because they're not required to dismantle the nuclear program, they will rev it up all over again. And the sanctions that were in place that had Russia and China involved will be very, very difficult to conjure up once again, because it's going to be very difficult to strike the same deal. So the Iranians are playing the Americans for fools. What is the president saying? He's saying, give diplomacy a chance. Let's try to control Iran's nuclear program. You're not controlling it, sir. What you're doing is you're allowing them to catch their breath, strengthen their economy, and resume at the time that they deem most appropriate. The White House also said, when reporters pressed Jay Carney, they said, well, you know, parts of this deal remain in secret and we're not going to reveal it. And they keep saying that what the Iranians are saying are for domestic propaganda reasons. I beg to differ. I think the propaganda is the other way around. I think in this case, the Iranians are, the leader Rouhani and his foreign minister are telling the truth. They've simply been asked to freeze or lower production, but not dismantle the program. And soon enough, it will be apparent, just like in other instances, the president is lying to the American people. He does not have a handle on these negotiations. And this is not just Dr. Grace saying it. This is not just a conservative commentator saying it. Democrats across this country are worried. In fact, there's a bipartisan push in the Senate to instill sanctions on Iran. They're not buying the president's line. It seems nowadays that the truth comes more from foreign leaders than from our very own president. And the bad news this week just kept coming on Obamacare. We now know that there is an internal report that explains that the HHS, the department that oversees Obamacare, they dumped the previous company that was running their website and they hired somebody else. And they say very, very clearly in their report, we have to get the back end of the website fixed as soon as possible. The back end is the means by which somebody who chooses a health plan can pay for it, so the insurance company gets the money. And they say that the entire website has to be fully functional by March. Otherwise, Obamacare itself is in grave jeopardy. Now, let's think for a moment to what Kathleen Sebelius has been telling us. Has she been telling us that, yes, there are serious problems and they're working on it? Oh, no. She and the president have been telling us for a very, very long time that things are basically running quite smoothly with just a few minor glitches. Remember those terms? Roll it, Brittany.
Well, Mr. Waxman, what I find is a lot of people are eager for information. They are confused by what they read and hear. And frankly, the launch didn't help that. But as people understand their options and choices, I find that there is enormous enthusiasm, often huge relief. A lot of individuals who received the notice of a cancellation are unlocked from a policy choice that they did not feel was good for them or their families. They were kind of locked into a plan. And I talk to people every day who now have 40 or 50 choices, a range of marketplace plans, the option to pick and choose. That isn't to say that there aren't some individuals who would have preferred to stay in their plans, which is why I think the president decided on the transition policy in the marketplace. But a lot of individuals
they didn't know what they had offered
cancellation
to them
notices are thrilled with the choices that are now available to them.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Chair now
So those are the
recognizes
terms that Sebelius has been describing Obamacare. People are thrilled overall with the program. And the administration said over and over again, yeah, they're working through the quote-unquote glitches. I remember we even had a spoof on this show a couple of months ago about the use of the word glitches. And we noticed that the mainstream media was also using that term. Well, nobody's talking about glitches anymore. The report is actually talking about dire consequences both for Obamacare and for the health insurance companies. Dire consequences for Americans. And so we see clearly that both the HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius has been lying to us, and so has the president on just how bad Obamacare really is. But you know, the American people have wisened up. And now the latest polls show that we have a record high number of voters who oppose Obamacare. And a majority also believe that it's going to increase their health care costs. And very, very few think that it's actually going to improve the quality of care. You have 59% of voters who oppose health care, and that's up from 55%. But check this out. This is a really important statistic. nearly 1/3 of Democrats, you've got 30% of Democrats right now oppose the law, and that was up from 22% in June. Do you remember when Ted Cruz did his filibuster and so many people kept saying, oh, we can't change Obamacare, it's the law of the land, the law of the land. Well, the law of the land, now you have 1/3 of Democrats who were running scared from the law of the land. And in the red states and the purple states, you have Democrats now that are running ads against the precious law of the land that we couldn't even touch a hair on the head of before. Roll it, Brittany.
It's here, in small towns and wide open spaces, that Ann Kirkpatrick listens and learns. It's why she blew the whistle on the disastrous healthcare website, calling it stunning ineptitude, and worked to fix it. She fought to hold insurance companies accountable so they can't deny coverage for pre-existing conditions or drop coverage when you get sick. Ann Kirkpatrick, seeing what's wrong, doing what's right. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Well, this is actually funny if it wasn't so tragic. So now you have a candidate in Arkansas, Ann Kirkpatrick, calling the Obamacare website rollout, quote unquote, stunning ineptitude. And you know why she's doing it? Because the statistics do not fare well for Obamacare. You know what independents think about Obamacare? They now oppose it. 64% of independents oppose Obamacare. So this is absolutely stunning. And what we see is that the president's credibility, along with the disastrous rollout of this law, is collapsing. He is now into the 30s in his poll ratings, and that's because shows like this and commentators across this country have shown the American people that he does not tell the truth. Remember, when he was elected in 2008, his record was very thin. What did he have going for him? He was really likable, most people thought, and he was an awesome speaker. He managed to speak about the grand ideals that really sparked such enthusiasm, inspired so many people. Yet we've seen through the course of his presidency that no matter how grandiose his ideals are, his policies are dreadful. And instead of fessing up, instead of coming clean, instead of telling the American people the truth so that members of Congress, members of the House and the Senate can pass legislation to fix the problems, which we desperately need them to do, he keeps lying. And that, in the end, isn't helping him, and it isn't helping his party, because the chickens are coming home to roost. As every month passes, his approval rating is dropping, and the approval for Obamacare is dropping. He should have taken the hand that Ted Cruz extended to him during that filibuster. He was given a golden opportunity to say, well, listen, I hear there's a contingency of the American people who are concerned. They're vexed about Obamacare. Here are some things that we can do together to make sure that we mitigate some of the disastrous aspects of the law. Most people would have still rallied to him and would have said, well, he's doing the best he can to fix known problems. Instead, right now, he seems to be a person who's burying his head in the sand and hoping that all the bad news goes away. He comes across as an adolescent, and he's also constantly trying to change the conversation. The latest change of conversation is try to get us all to talk about income equality. Well, you didn't campaign on income inequality. Forgive me, income inequality, not income equality. Although I think income equality is what that socialist in the White House ultimately does want for America. He wants us to talk about income inequality. He wants, again, to throw another smokescreen so that we don't focus on the policies that he did waste precious time on that are collapsing. On Iran and on Obamacare, it is clear the President of the United States is just not telling the American people the truth. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, and I'm upholding values that will never, ever die.
Wherever he laid his hat was his home. And when he died, all he left us alone.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
I'm friends with the monster that's under my bed. Get along with the voices inside of my head. You're trying to save me, stop holding your breath. And you think I'm crazy, yeah, you think I'm crazy.
Welcome back to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. I'm the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com. And you know, that song is appropriate for this segment because guess which dirty little monster has been rearing its ugly head? It's the IRS. The IRS has been investigating a group called the Friends of Abe for 2 years. Who are the Friends of Abe? What is the Friends of Abe? Well, Friends of Abe are a group that was founded 9 years ago, and they consist of Hollywood actors, actresses, directors, producers, you name it, who are conservative. So conservative Hollywood, whatever there is of conservative Hollywood, it's a group of people with like-minded ideas. They applied for tax-exempt status. Now, most of us think that's an oxymoron. Hollywood and conservative doesn't quite seem to go together. But in fact, there are more conservatives in Hollywood than might meet the eye. And that's because a lot of them have to keep their political ideas quiet for fear of being blackballed within an industry that is highly ideological. You remember in August at the Republican National Convention, Clint Eastwood came out swinging against the president and his policies. And he revealed what is known in some circles that, yes, there are conservatives in Hollywood. Roll it, Brittany.
Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what's a movie tradesman doing out here? You know, they're all left-wingers out there, left of Lenin. At least that's what people think, but that's not really the case. There's a lot of conservative people, a lot of moderate people, Republicans, Democrats in Hollywood. It's just that conservative people, by the nature of the word itself, play a little more close to the vest, and they don't go around hot dogging it. So, but they're there. Believe me, they're there. And I just, I think that, in fact, there's some of them around town. I saw John Voight. There's a lot of people around here in town.
You know, it is actors like Clint Eastwood, like John Voight, very well established, very famous, very wealthy. They can come out and openly say that they are conservative. But for the most part, actors and actresses who are conservative tend to keep it a secret. And 1,500 apparently joined this organization called the Friends of Abe. They join it for companionship. They want to share ideas with like-minded people in the same line of work. But they're not going to necessarily come out in the open. It's a secret organization by like-minded conservatives. Obviously, one of the things they're going to talk about is how they can't be too open about their ideology because they're not going to get any work. And actors and actresses and directors, most of them, they're just freelancers. So they really rely on the good graces of others in order to get employment. Well, the IRS has been investigating them. This group applied for a 501c3 status, which is tax-exempt status, and it's been 2 years, and the IRS is still investigating. And guess what the IRS wanted to know in particular? It wanted access to its website, especially to get their hands on the database of members. Fortunately, Friends of Abe told the IRS, no, we're not giving you that database. Can you imagine what that database would do in the hands of Democrats? Oh, they'd love to let it be known around the circle of wealthy donors, wealthy Hollywood donors, that this is the group of conservatives in Hollywood. Let's blackball them. Let's impoverish them. Let's diminish them. Let's make sure that this force doesn't grow. Well, I hope that Friends of Abe keeps resisting the intrusive questions of the IRS and that they nonetheless get their tax-exempt status so that this organization can grow and you can have more and more people within Hollywood not being afraid to reveal their conservative credentials. Look what an impact it has when a member of the Hollywood elite touts his conservatism. I mean, what made news at the RNC? We can still talk about it to this day. It was Clint Eastwood openly bashing the president's policies. Roll it, Brittany.
When Mr. Obama won the election, and though I wasn't a big supporter, I was watching that night. I just thought, this is great. I mean, everybody's crying. Oprah was crying. And I was even crying. I haven't cried that hard since I found out that there's 23 million unemployed people in this country. This administration hasn't done enough to cure that. So I've got Mr. Obama sitting here, and I just was going to ask him a couple questions. So, Mr. President, how do you handle promises that you made? You don't have it. Okay. Well, I know even some of the people in your own party were very disappointed when you didn't close Gitmo. What do you mean, shut up?
Well, we still remember that. We're going to long forget about Mitt Romney, but we're not going to forget Clint Eastwood talking to an empty chair on that stage. It was shocking. It was exciting. It was thrilling. It was a remarkable moment in this nation's culture and politics. And this group, Friends of Abe, it wants tax-exempt status so that Hollywood, folks in Hollywood can give a contribution and then be able to deduct that contribution on their income reports. You know, it seems like it's a no-brainer. They should get it easily and quickly. Why do you need to investigate this group for 2 years? And why do you need to be so intrusive in your questions? It seems that the IRS, that ugly monster, will not stop rearing its head in one specific direction: to crush conservatism wherever it can. And instead of the scandal that has embroiled the IRS chastening this group, it's obvious they haven't stopped. It seems that their appetite grows because in many ways they were successful in curtailing political activity since they went in this direction of trying to block conservative organizations from flourishing. And so I think the lesson that they've learned is we got away with it and we can keep doing it. So let's harass even these folks in Hollywood who are an embattled minority within that community. It is time for all of us to take a firm stand against the IRS and speak with one voice. We are going to close you down. We are going to shut you down. We are going to get you out of our lives and put you back into a tiny box. You, IRS, work for us. We are not going to be intimidated by your arbitrary, power-grabbing manners. You are listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com. And here, every week, we uphold values that will never, ever die.
Well, if you ask me where I come from, here's what I tell everyone. I was
born by God's dear grace in an extraordinary place where the stars and stripes and the eagle fly.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.